gamers of Reddit, what's a game you've played that you wish you could experience for the first time again, and why? RDR. Crossing into Mexico the first time. For me it's Arthur riding back to camp to confront Dutch and McCann in RDR2. Just all of RDR2 for me honestly. Bioshock. Would you kindly wipe my memories of this game? GTA. San Andreas. I was old enough to understand some of the themes. I think it's the game that really drew me into video game storytelling. Plus I loved bumping into NPCs on the street then stabbing them to death after they started talking trash. Having played previous GTAs, the first thing we had to do on SAB was ride a bicycle. Was mind-blowingly fun to me. Zelda bot. After the first playthrough it's just never the same. RuneScape or WoW. I can always make a new account, but I can never go back to being a noob. Had to scroll a longer way than I expected to see these two. Really any MMO in the early days of that genre. Exploring a shared world with all these other people for essentially the first time was some real magic. Especially before all the social tools got built into the games. You had so make a real effort to keep teaming up with like-minded players, a thing taken for granted today. Morrowind. That sense of exploration was incredible. Minecraft, cause of how clueless you are. For some reason I liked that when I couldn't even defeat the dragon. The first time I ever played Pokemon. My first game was Pokemon Sapphire, and I was absorbed in that game. The music, the feeling of encountering new Pokemon for the first time. The problem with Pokemon for me is that, while the games are fun enough to play, the core gameplay gets insanely stale. But the first few years of Pokemon for me, between 2002 and 2007, were some of my favorite. Mass Effect Trilogy. Subnautica. I don't really wanna spoil it, but please play it. It's defo one of my favorite games of all time. Portal. Mass Effect Trilogy, and Fallout New Vegas. Undertale was spoiled for me before I played it. By the time I got my hands on a copy of the game it already had a bad reputation due to the toxic fanbase. Same here. My friend told me about the roots and the characters before I even knew that it existed. When I finally got to play it, I pretty much knew what I was in for. Sure, it was an amazing game, even if I got spoiled, but I wish I could play it again without knowing anything from the start. My brother is like this. It makes it hard to want to talk about or play any games with him. His enjoyment of games all comes from being able to do things super well and 100% clearing and all that. Whereas mine comes from figuring things out, overcoming challenges, and experiencing the story. Aka the exact opposite. I just started Stardew Valley and invited him and my other brother to play with me on my farm. And now I kinda regret it, because within 2 days I suddenly had a crazy amount of progress. Feels like I was robbed of the experience. Fallout 3. Exiting Vault 101 for the first time gave me feelings that I still can't describe. Bioshock. There's a reason this game really kicked off the games are art discussion. The goosebumps Sandra Ryan's speech in that first bathysphere gave me. It's rare to experience the kind of delight that Bioshock created. The Dragon Age games. I want to fall in love with the story and characters all over again. I started playing Dragon Age Origins. I had played a bit of Inquisition a few years ago, and wow, it is amazing. Even if the combat isn't my favorite, the dialogue, stories, and just everything is so good. I just finished the part with the Dalish and the werewolves, as well as the Red Cliff and Urn of Sacred Ashes, and both of those had like a whole game's worth of story each on their own. I'm so excited to play more and work my way through the trilogy. Final Fantasy Tactics. I know the mechanics of the game inside and out now, so I can just destroy any challenge to it. But that first time around, it's one of the most challenging, frustrating, and rewarding playthroughs you'll have. Anyone who just waltzed into Daughter Trade City for the first time knows what I'm talking about. That, and you have yet to discover the depth of the job system. Stardew Valley. An amazing game anyway, but especially in the first farm. Simply not knowing the farm layout, not knowing all the possibilities or game mechanics, really meeting the townsfolk for the first time. Age of Empires 2nd. Hollow Knight. At the beginning it was so mysterious, uncovering a deserted wasteland ECC, and the satisfaction after defeating the Radiants. Life. My current save progress is corrupted for now. Red Dead Redemption 2 hands down. First time I played through, it was an emotional roller coaster. That story and character development, the sheer number of things to do and discover. I've done the game 3 times now, and it has not got tiring. It's amazing. Then you have online that you'd think would have just as exciting a storyline, just as many weird NPC random events. But no, it's just you on a horse running around trying to avoid level 20s taking pot shots. Pokemon Go but with animal tranquilizers. The same 15 bounties. Oh, and occasionally an invite to random events that most of the time consist of you just trying to do the game while avoiding some cuck lassoing people or trying to kill the animals with dynamite. Edit. Forgot the ever-present excitement of paying 40 gold bars for the pass in the game that unlocks special in-game stuff like gift certificates for ugly thing ponchos or 30% off shit you've already bought in the game. Monkey Island. Lego Star Wars. Lego Star Wars came at this time where it was my dream game. Collectibles, lots of stages, and hundreds of playable characters. Add on to that the fact that it was set in the Star Wars universe and everyone was a Lego character based on the sets I owned at the time. And you had love at first sight. I didn't know it was coming out. I didn't know anything about it. I went to Kmart one day, remember that? Closed bracket comma. My dad stopped and said Lego Star Wars? Exclamation mark, comma, and then, knowing I loved Star Wars and Lego as a kid, immediately bought it, knowing I needed it. He was right. It's my favorite game. End of sentence. The complete saga is a must play. Outer Wilds. I love it, but once the puzzles are spoiled it doesn't feel the same at all. Nowadays, I live vicariously through friends' experiences with it. I've played through it twice. The second time was still enjoyable as I approached it more like a book, to read without skipping pages. It wasn't the same experience as the first run, just enjoyable in a different way, but I've been gaming for 30 years, and the first time through is easily one of the most important gaming experiences I've ever had. Every Halo game. If I could go back to the night 10 plus years ago when I first met my best friend, I would love to. I met him 2 years earlier in elementary school and thought he was weird. So weird, in fact, that I actively avoided him in 4th grade. Once 6th grade rolled around, I found out he lived in my neighborhood and a mutual friend had me go there to check out a fort he built under the porch. And he eventually asked me to come over for his birthday/brother's surgery success party the next night. That night, he received a used Xbox 360 and a copy of Halo 3. All I knew about Halo was that it was rated M and my parents didn't let me play those games. And in an act of silent defiance and discovery, we spent all night playing that campaign. A decade-long friendship has spawned from that night and that game. And we will die on that hill that says Halo 3 is the greatest experience ever. Life is Strange. Detroit Become Human. I love every bit of it and replayed it a couple of times, but it's never like the first time. The Witcher 3. Absolutely loved that game. With the lockdown and second-hand PS4s available for cheap, I decided to go ahead and get the game after my friends have recommended it to me for years. Well, I ended up playing for 12 hours yesterday, with more to come. No regrets. Half-Life. Journey. The first experience of that game is absolutely surreal. I cried when I got to the end of that game. Alice Madness Returns. World of Warcraft. Slowly discovering the huge world, quests and details is amazing. The first time walking into Ironforge and seeing hundreds of people in there, all doing their own thing, was amazing. To this day, one of my most memorable gaming experiences. Without a doubt the Dark Souls series. Particularly Bloodborne. I miss that unbelievable, indescribable rush of going from what the hell, this game is just made to be hard. Duck this to having it suddenly just click and truly understand the world and appreciate it for what it is. Sly 2. This game made my childhood. Played it on PS2 with my brothers when we were kids and bought it just few years ago on PS3, and damn I remember the nostalgia the first time I loaded the game after so many years. XCOM UFO Defense. Even though it's dated, the pacing and music really add tension to the excellent gameplay once you get over the learning curve. One of the greatest strategy games ever. I still play it with great enjoyment. OpenXCOM is amazing. If you haven't tried it, Heroes of Might and Magic 3 is another amazing strategy title that still holds up. Nothing from my childhood would give me the same sense of wonder. I could never feel the way about Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasies or Zeldas as I did as a kid. I wouldn't want to play them again. Maybe a game like Dark Cloud 2, where I could just enjoy the game as a game without being pulled into the world. DC2 is probably the most impressed I've been with a game in the last 20 years. Which sounds ridiculous. But a game like Breath of the Wild had such a low ceiling to impress. You know Zelda is going to be perfectly functional at the least and a masterpiece at the most. Dark Cloud 2 was a sequel to a mediocre action RPG. The original game had ambition, but absolutely terrible execution. But DC2 refined all of the ambitious features, removed all of the bad ones, and added countless good ones. It felt like a real labor of love. I heard that when Konami made Suikoden, they had the concepts for Suikoden 2 in mind, but decided to use a throwaway idea for the first game as a dry run, and if it was successful, they'd put all their good ideas into a sequel, which is why Suikoden 2 is so much better than 1. That's how Dark Cloud 2 felt. It felt like the first game was just a test if people were interested, and DC2 was full steam ahead. That game will never get the appreciation it deserves, and that upsets me so much. Star Wars Battlefront 2 for PS2. That game brought my Star Wars imagination to life. Also, this might be a good place to ask this as it's full of gamers. I've never really gotten into an RPG. I played Fallen Order because Star Wars and liked it, but I'd like to dive into a new one. I saw Horizon Zero Dawn was highly rated, but don't know much about it. Any recommendations for essentially a first timer? If you could transport me back to myself as a child, with same the mindset that I had back then, Pokemon Blue. Aside from that, IDK. But I can give a short list. The original Red Dead Redemption, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted 4, Kingdom Hearts, Undertale, Far Cry Primal, Roll or Die. I'll take whatever comes up. The Sims. Hitman. Picked up Hitman 2 last year, and first it was the locations. I get to go to Mumbai, Miami, Paris, Italy. I thought it was the coolest thing. I love traveling, and I love seeing different locations around the world, especially in video games. Stayed for the gameplay. You don't shoot everyone like in COD. You get a disguise and get as close as you can to the target, kill them quietly, and leave quietly. This is the closest James Bond game there is, and the same developers are making the new JB game. How perfect is that? Oh, the game also looks pretty. My favorite levels are Bangkok and Sapienza/Italy. Sometimes I like to turn off the HUD and pretend I live there and enjoy the scenery. Dark Souls 1. RuneScape, but specifically RuneScape as a kid. It wouldn't be the same to play it as an adult for the first time, but playing it when I was like 7 years old and I couldn't find my way anywhere, just wandering around and exploring for hours on end, mining and smithing my own bronze gear. Can't beat that feeling. I still get nostalgic whenever I hear the RS music. Hey, you're finally awake. Skyrim, obviously. The Witness. The sense of discovery as you wrap your brain around the game. It's an experience that's amazing. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. I love this game and still come back to it if I had a bad day. Breath of the Wild was freaking magical. This feeling of unchained freedom in an open world game I had never felt before and after. Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. My favorite game in the series, and full of powerful memories. Followed directly by Pokemon Pearl, the first Pokemon game I finished by myself. The very first time I entered World of Warcraft was around 12 years old, and I don't think a video game will ever give me that level of dopamine rush again. I have two: Fallout New Vegas and Ratchet & Clank Going Commando. Played the campaigns tons of times and rarely find anything new when playing them. First time though we are the best times for each I've had from games. Staying up days on end to finish. Minesweeper all the way. Mayfair, the city of lost heaven. Return of the Abradim. Seriously y'all, if you haven't played this game please go check it out. It's by the same lone developer who made Papers, Please and is genuinely some of the most fun I've had playing a game in a long time. It's a detective game with a super interesting gameplay loop that really makes you feel smart and manages to stay interesting all the way to the end. Once you beat it though, that's it. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.